Welcome to a new episode of Beginner's Mind. My name is Chris with another recording for Life Science Get Together. It's April 17 and COVID-19 is holding the world hostage. Politicians all over the world have established sharp measures to prevent a severe outbreak. It helped a lot to keep the health damage to the population at a very low level. But the question arises, when can we go back to a normal life? What must happen that everything reverts? Some people think that the measures taken are the right ones and should be kept up. Others believe that the statistics we see regarding the spread of the disease and deaths don't justify the measures any longer. Some compare it even to the seasonal and the swine flu of 2009 and 2010 and point out that these viruses are more severe than SARS-CoV-2. However, currently no cure or vaccine against SARS-CoV-2 does exist. Some politicians say it needs both, a therapeutic and a vaccine, before we can even think about going back to normal. The first one, the therapeutic, is currently in development by the WHO. The World Health Organization has started clinical trials in which existing drugs are tested for their efficacy against COVID-19. But what happens on the vaccine side? Usually vaccines for other diseases cannot be repurposed. It is different from medications. Developing vaccines needs a unique approach for every single virus. What is a vaccine all about? The health authorities want people to get the illness to encourage the body to build its immune defense. Of course, without the nasty side effects of the actual disease. Developing a vaccine is a very complicated process that only a few companies worldwide can do. Additionally, politicians all over the world make the way back to normal dependent on the existence of a vaccine against the coronavirus SARS-CoV-2. The question of how long it takes to have a vaccine on the market I will discuss in today's episode. One of the teams researching vaccines is Themis Bioscience in Austria. Themis has licensed the platform technology from Institut Pasteur. Based on this technology, Themis has already tested vaccines against diseases like chikungunya, Zika, Lassa fever, or MERS in humans. Today, I'm talking with Dr. Erich Tauber, founder and CEO of Themis. Welcome, Erich, and thank you very much for your time.
Hi, good morning.
And I'm very happy that I'm supported by the professional journalist Elisabeth Fneisel. Thank you very much for supporting me. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. My name is Elisabeth. I'm a journalist with a focus on health and science topics, and I work for Quo Vadis Veritas Redaktions GmbH, which is a non-profit company that operates as research and media platform in Austria with a focus on high quality journalism, and our media outlet is our website Addendum, where we publish all the findings and exciting stories. So I hope you maybe check it out. It's addendum.org, and I'm happy to be here and to join Christian when talking to Erich.
Thank you, Elisabeth. Erich, you're one of the most experienced vaccine development experts in the world, in my opinion. Tell us a bit about your background. What brought you into the vaccine development space?
I think I started 20 years ago in vaccines. Before that, I was working as a pediatrician. And I think by chance, I came to one of the vaccine developers in Austria and started to develop here. I think what's intriguing is that it's maybe the most cost-efficient and easiest tools to prevent disease, and this is maybe why I like it.
Erich, 10 years ago, you founded Themis Bioscience, which in my opinion is one of the best vaccine development teams in the world. You raised more than 100 million euros over several financing rounds, public and private money. How did the company develop since you founded it about 10 years ago?
I think what has changed over the years is that the team was growing. We were initially thinking about a very small team and just bringing early technologies into a very early preclinical proof of concept. And as of now, we are roughly 40 plus people in the company. Until 2 years ago, it was less than 10. So we were quite successful by getting contracts for pandemic vaccines, like for Lassa, for MERS, for chikungunya, and now for COVID. And so I think what we have been doing is we were able to raise capital both for commercial reasons, but also for more global health reasons. And this allows us to grow a team and to build a team.
Very impressive. Currently, when I open the newspapers, I read a lot about viral pandemic, COVID-19 and coronavirus. I think the scientific name is SARS-CoV-2, and it's shining a light on vaccine development. What does it usually need to bring a vaccine to the market? How is the development process going from the lab bench until a vaccine hits the market?
Typically, you start by understanding the disease mechanism. You need to understand how you can, what is the immunological mechanism behind the protection. Like, for instance, if you look back into diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, HIV, until now, nobody really understands what is the right mechanism for protection here. This is why it makes it so difficult to make those vaccines. For coronaviruses, it appears to be much better understood. People know that this spike antigen is to be targeted. So what people are now doing is they are targeting vaccines against this surface protein from corona. So the next step is then to validate that this idea can be translated into an animal experiment. You need to demonstrate some sort of proof of concept of protection of antibodies. You need to develop a manufacturing process. You need to demonstrate safety and tolerability, and then at some time you have a stepwise process when you go into humans. You start with a smaller group, learn about mode of action and safety until you're able to demonstrate safety and efficacy in a large cohort. And this is usually a process which, for dengue viruses, it took 50 years so far, and we're still not yet there eventually. For other vaccines like COVID, it will definitely be shorter.
So this is very interesting because approximately it takes like 13 years on average to develop a vaccine drug. And of course, now in the middle of this crisis, everyone wants a vaccine as fast as possible. And so in the newest interviews, it sounds like a vaccine could be available already next year. What makes such a fast process possible?
It can be possible by putting a number of things in parallel, by starting many things at the same time, doing things in parallel, and be more aggressive in terms of financial risks, but also in terms of like a risk-benefit ratio when it comes to the clinical use of the vaccine.
But what are the risks that come with such an accelerated process?
It depends on the technology, and it depends on where you start. when you make like a drugs like the nukes or like let's say chloroquine, you talk about people who have who are ventilated in the intensive care, and so there's a different risk-benefit ratio if you would vaccinate healthy children. And what has developed in the last 30 years is an extreme conservative approach in vaccine development, because you want to vaccinate healthy people, sometimes healthy children or infants, and you don't want to put them at a, I don't know, 1 to 10% risk of getting some fever, when there is maybe only 1 to a million risk of getting some sort of meningitis. For COVID, this is different. When you are at least older than 70, you have a substantial risk of fatal infection. And this poses a completely different light on the risk-benefit analysis than we are used to have for vaccine development in the last decades.
You mentioned that your team has been working on other diseases already. We were talking about dengue, chikungunya, MERS, Lassa, fever. Is the expertise that your team gained in that area helpful to work on a novel vaccine against a virus that's only known since November 2019?
Yes, and I mean, the virus is known for a very short period of time, but it's very closely related to the first SARS virus and to MERS, which are described like for more than 10 years now. And the scientists are convinced that the behavior of these vaccines from an immunological and protection aspect is very comparable. So this is one reason why it will be easier than for other targets. On the other side, we can use exactly the same manufacturing pathway and manufacturing process as we are currently doing it for other vaccines. And we have now the possibility to produce up to 200,000 doses of vaccine in one manufacturing batch for our platform technology. And this will be the same scale we use already for the first manufacturing run of our COVID candidate. So, and then it took us 10 years to develop this manufacturing process. So this is, of course, a head start into vaccine development when you have a platform in hands. And this is what all the other manufacturers are also doing. They use established platforms. They just change the antigen, and here you go. At the same time, you have learned quite something about the safety of the backbone technology, which is also helpful.
Can you tell a little bit more about the platform technology that you've mentioned that gives Themis Bioscience a head start in the development?
What we are taking as the backbone is the measles virus vaccine, which is the classical pediatric vaccine. And we genetically insert antigens of interest, like in our case, the spike protein of COVID and or of coronavirus. And it's like we are kind of, it's like a Trojan horse where we let the body think it's a measles virus infection, which is not harmful because we don't take the wild type virus, we take the vaccine virus from measles. And the body is mounting an immune response against also the coronavirus antigens, which are genetically inserted into the measles virus genome.
Well, funding such projects is always a big challenge because it's extremely expensive. So bringing a new product to the market can cost up to €1 billion. So where do you get financial support for developing a novel vaccine candidate?
It depends a bit. I think for COVID, nobody knows how this will turn out commercially and how this will be funded at the end. Right now, organizations like Sepi, this Coalition for Pandemic Preparedness, is funding most of the vaccine projects, also ours. And I think some projects are funded governmentally, like the J&J project, but right now it's difficult to predict whether this will be the biggest vaccine ever or whether this will be a commercially not viable product.
Mm. The other day, I read a very interesting interview with you in the Austrian newspaper Wiener Zeitung, where you were talking about also Ebola. And you said that a potential Ebola vaccine left scorched earth within developers and companies. So what did you mean by that?
I think the problem is that like for Ebola, governments, WHO, have put lots of pressure on the established pharmaceutical companies to develop a vaccine, because it would be, from a technological part, could have been done. And this led to companies like J&J, GSK, Merck investing hundreds of millions of euros. I would say that none of the regulatory agencies was as helpful as they are now, for instance, for COVID. And this led to huge investments from those companies at no financial return, and most likely never a financial return for Ebola. And so I think right now, many of these big companies are more in a holding position before they would embark on another Ebola vaccine.
And what do you think, how big is the risk now for companies in the race of developing a COVID-19 vaccine or SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, to lose that race and to end up with a lot of costs without any return?
I mean, this is a speculation. We cannot really comment. What's definitely helpful is that when organizations like Sepi step in for the funding, then the risk, of course, comes down to, let's say, opportunity risks of doing nothing else. But right now, many of the companies anyhow had to stop all other products because you cannot do clinical trials with other products right now.
One crucial phase of drug development is phase 3, where a drug is tested in a lot of patients to make sure it is safe and safe for use. So is there an estimate on how many patients you will need during phase 3 to make sure that your vaccine is ready for use and not harmful to anyone?
You mean for COVID or in
Yes.
general? Yes, for COVID, we are now all talking about moving targets, and nobody really knows how the development pathway will be looking like. But I think it's a good bet to assume that the products will be approved using some accelerated pathway. And I would expect that all the regulatory agencies, which are super helpful right now, would agree with the manufacturers on initial safety requirements and would allow the broader use of the vaccine with, I would say, smaller hurdles than we would have expected 2 months ago.
Okay. So at the moment, there are also rumors that in other countries, vaccines or potential vaccines could be tested in people before they have been tested in animals. So what do you think about that? Because as far as I know, this wouldn't be possible, for instance, in Austria because of the Declaration of Helsinki and of ethical standards.
I mean, the Declaration of Helsinki is is also in use in the United States, where Moderna have initiated the first phase 1 study a while ago. And I don't know to what extent they had some sort of animal data. They didn't have a toxicity study, but this is more or less has to do with, I would say, the platform approach. And if you remember, like pandemic flu, swine flu, here the manufacturers and developers have agreed on a pathway where the platform itself got approval, and then the real swine flu vaccine was also brought into people without additional preclinical testing.
So where are you at the moment in the development process of your potential vaccine?
We are working on constructs which are more or less the vaccine prototypes, and those will go into, or those are tested currently into animals. We will select the best candidate based on in vivo and in vitro testing, and aim for a phase 1 clinical trial start in the middle of this year.
One question from my end. When I read in the newspaper, or when I open the newspaper, I hear speculations at which point in time travel bans will be taken away and it will be free to travel. And particularly some newspapers write about the connects to vaccine development. So I think the Austrian Chancellor said, once we have a vaccine on the market, travel will be possible again like it was before. How much time do you think, Erich, will it take until we see a new vaccine on the market that addresses clearly this new virus?
It will largely depend on the scientific success and also on operational success and availability of manufacturing. And I mean, if you would vaccinate like, I don't know, 8 billion of people, then this would be a travel ban for many years. So it's difficult to predict when like a really large cohort will be available. I'm confident that at the end of this year, like people at the forefront, like healthcare workers, would have vaccination.
By the end of this year already? That's pretty quick.
That's what I would expect, and I think this is what most of the companies would expect for the technology platforms. Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned that a lot of funding comes from an organization which is called Sepi. What's the purpose of this organization?
This was more or less funded after this Ebola disaster, I would say. And what has happened was that people said we cannot afford that the world would be able to make a vaccine, but nobody's investing into it. So they take away the commercial risk of vaccine development for potential pandemics. And so we are getting paid for developing vaccines against, let's say, commercial failures like Lassa fever, which is a dreadful disease in Western Africa. Every year there are hundreds and thousands of people dying of Lassa fever. But as this is not really a commercial attractive target, nobody has developed a vaccine. And they are playing a crucial role now by helping companies to develop vaccines for those difficult diseases. And one part of their mission is also this, what they call disease X, which is this unknown disease. And the aim is to get ready quickly to defend or to make a vaccine, which was the reason why, for instance, Moderna had the possibility to start quite quickly.
What are the expectations of Sepi when they fund the project?
I mean, I'm not a spokesperson for Sepi, so you would need to address this question to them. But their mission, more or less, is to have a vaccine for those who need it most, which very often are people who cannot afford a vaccine, or during the pandemic, it will be important that there will be a way to funnel the vaccine to those who need it most. We all heard in the media, give me a vaccine for $1 billion. This is not what Sepi would support. So they would want to have a fair distribution of the products.
I completely understand that. I think, it's like when it's raining, you need an umbrella also on sunny days, and not starting building one when the rain comes. So I believe that our society needs a company like yours, like Themis Bioscience, and also organizations like Sepi that provide funding in times when we don't have a pandemic. And currently, the situation with the coronavirus is shedding a large light on our industry. So my last question to you, Erich, is what improvement would you wish to happen for our industry in future, so that we have a stable and running infrastructure to develop vaccines when we need it the most?
I think that we have very nice environments, and I think it would be unfair if I would say that we are treated badly and poorly all the time. But what I think here in Austria is a bit missing is appreciation for entrepreneurship and appreciation for science. But I don't know what we need to do to improve this.
Erich, thank you very much for your time. I think you are doing a great work with your team, and thank you very much for giving your insights. And I'm looking forward to hear more success stories from your company.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Please share the podcast and make sure you've subscribed. Have a great day.